Some people find a wallet and see money. Emily Carter found one and saw a choice that could change the rest of her life. The rain had been falling over Chicago for nearly 3 hours, turning the sidewalks silver and soaking through the thin seams of Emily's old sneakers. She stood beneath the flickering sign of a 24-hour pharmacy on West Belmont Avenue, one hand wrapped around a paper prescription, the other gripping a black leather wallet that did not belong to her. Inside that wallet was more cash than she had seen in years. Crisp $100 bills, a platinum credit card, a driver's license with the name Alexander Whitmore printed beneath the photograph of a man who looked like he had never once had to count quarters for bus fare. Emily's chest tightened as a cold gust of wind slipped under her coat. Her phone buzzed again. It was another message from Mr. Donnelly, her landlord. Rent by tomorrow at 5 p.m., or I begin the eviction process. No more extensions. She read it twice, even though the words had already carved themselves into her mind. Behind her, through the pharmacy windows, rows of medicines sat beneath bright white lights, close enough to touch and still completely out of reach. Her mother's heart medication had gone up again. The clinic wanted payment before scheduling the next round of tests. The electricity bill was sitting unopened on the kitchen table because Emily already knew what it said. And in her hand, as if dropped straight out of a cruel dream, was enough money to fix all of it. Just for 1 month. Maybe 2. Enough to keep their tiny apartment warm. Enough to buy groceries that were not dented cans from the discount shelf. Enough to let her mother sleep without pretending the pain was just a little tiredness. Emily swallowed hard and opened the wallet again, shielding it from the rain with her sleeve. Tucked behind the license was a small photograph of a little girl with blonde curls, smiling beside a Christmas tree. Emily stared at that photo longer than she meant to. She did not know who the child was. A daughter, maybe. A niece. Someone who loved the man who had lost this wallet. Someone who might be waiting at home. While he searched every pocket, every car seat, every sidewalk, wondering where it had gone. Emily closed her eyes. For one dangerous second, she imagined walking into the pharmacy, placing the bills on the counter, and finally hearing someone say, "Yes, Miss Carter, that will cover everything." She imagined her mother's relieved smile. She imagined unlocking their apartment door without fearing a notice taped to it. Then she imagined looking at herself in the bathroom mirror afterward and knowing exactly what she had done. Her father's voice came back to her, soft but firm, the way it sounded when she was a little girl and he caught her returning extra change to a cashier. Being poor can empty your pockets, Emmy, but don't ever let it empty your name. Emily let out a shaky breath. The rain blurred her vision, or maybe it was tears. She tucked the prescription into her coat, held the wallet tight against her chest, and stepped away from the pharmacy door. The address on the business card inside led to Whitmore Holdings, a glass tower on the other side of downtown. It was miles away, and she had only $4 left on her transit card. Still, she turned toward the bus stop. The medicine would have to wait. The rent would have to wait. Her fear would have to wait. Because whatever else Emily Carter had lost in life, she was not going to lose herself. By the time the bus arrived, Emily Carter's coat was dripping onto the cracked pavement, and her fingers had gone stiff around the wallet she refused to put in her pocket. She climbed aboard with her head lowered, tapped her transit card, and held her breath until the machine gave a weak beep instead of rejecting it. $4.17 left. That was what stood between her and walking home in the rain after midnight. She took a seat near the back, beside a fogged window, and watched the familiar blocks slide past in gray streaks of water and light. Laundromats, pawn shops, corner stores with handmade signs, apartment buildings with tired brick walls and fire escapes that looked older than the people living inside. This was the part of Chicago where Emily had learned how to stretch a paycheck, how to smile when customers were rude, and how to pretend she was not hungry until her mother had eaten first. At 25, she was supposed to be finishing nursing school, maybe renting a sunny little studio, maybe going out with friends on a Friday night, instead of memorizing pharmacy prices and bus schedules. But life had changed the year her father passed away from a sudden illness, leaving behind medical bills, a quiet apartment, and a mother who tried to keep working long after her own body begged her to rest. Emily had dropped out of community college with only 2 semesters left, promising herself it was temporary. Temporary became 1 year, then 2, then a life built around double shifts and overdue notices. Most mornings, she opened Rosie's diner before sunrise, tying on a faded blue apron while the kitchen smelled of coffee, bacon, and pancake batter. She knew which customers wanted cream without asking, which truck driver left exact change, and which elderly man came in every Tuesday with no money but too much pride to admit he was hungry. Emily always set a plate of scrambled eggs near the end of the counter and told him the cook had made an extra order by mistake. On weekends, she folded sheets at a family-owned laundromat until her shoulders ached. At night, she came home to a one-bedroom apartment where the heater rattled, the ceiling stained when it rained, and her mother, Linda Carter, waited in a recliner with a blanket over her knees and a brave smile that fooled no one. Emily was not perfect. She got tired. She got angry when rich customers left $1 tip on a $60 bill. She cried in the shower sometimes because it was the only place her mother would not hear. But she never took what was not hers. She never lied to get ahead. She never let bitterness become the loudest thing inside her. As the bus turned toward downtown, the towers ahead rose like another world, bright and untouchable against the wet night sky. Emily looked down at the business card again. Whitmore Holdings, North Michigan Avenue, penthouse reception. The name alone sounded expensive. She wondered what kind of man carried $10,000 like loose change and whether he would even notice it was gone before morning. Then her phone buzzed with a message from her mother. "Did you get the medicine, honey?" Emily stared at the screen until the words blurred. She typed slowly, "I am taking care of something first. I will explain soon." Then she held the wallet tighter, because doing the right thing suddenly felt heavier than anything she had ever carried. Across downtown, high above North Michigan Avenue, Alexander Whitmore stood behind the glass wall of his penthouse office and watched the rain blur the city into ribbons of white and gold. 32 floors below, taxis moved like yellow sparks through the dark streets, and people hurried under umbrellas without ever looking up. Alex had built his life on being the man above everyone else, the man who saw patterns before others saw problems, the man whose name could move investors, silence a boardroom, and turn failing companies into empires. At 32, he was the youngest chief executive officer in the history of Whitmore Holdings, a company his grandfather had started with one small delivery truck and a stubborn belief in hard work. Alex had taken that legacy and multiplied it until his face appeared on magazine covers, business channels, and charity event posters across the country. People called him brilliant. They called him disciplined. They called him impossible to impress. They did not call him lonely, because loneliness was not the kind of thing rich men were supposed to admit. On his desk sat a silver picture frame turned face down, a habit he had developed after his engagement ended 2 years earlier. The woman he had planned to marry had smiled beside him at fundraisers, promised she loved him for who he was, and privately negotiated access to his accounts with a consultant who later disappeared from the company. Around the same time, a trusted senior employee had been caught hiding losses behind false reports while praising Alex in every meeting. Since then, every compliment sounded rehearsed to him. Every kind gesture came with an invisible invoice. Every stranger who smiled too warmly made him wonder what they wanted. His assistant, Daniel Brooks, stood near the conference table with a tablet in his hand, looking uncomfortable in the silence. "The wallet is in place," Daniel said carefully. "The car is parked across from the bus stop. Camera is running. Are you certain you want to go through with this?" Alex did not turn around. "I want data, Daniel, not opinions." Daniel hesitated. "With respect, sir, people are not quarterly reports." Alex finally looked back, his expression calm but distant. "No, they are usually less honest." The test had been his idea, although he told himself it was an experiment, not a game. A simple black leather wallet, an expensive one but not flashy, placed near a bus stop in a neighborhood where life was difficult enough to reveal what people truly valued. Inside were $10,000 in cash, a few cards that had already been canceled for safety, a business card with the Whitmore Holdings address, and an old photograph of his niece, Lily, slipped in almost by accident. Alex had expected one of two outcomes. The wallet would vanish, or someone would return it only after removing the money. Either result would confirm what he already believed, and confirmation was easier than hope. Then Daniel's tablet chimed. A live video feed showed a young woman stepping out of the rain, bending down, and picking up the wallet. Her blonde hair clung damply to her cheeks, Her coat was too thin for the weather, and she looked exhausted in a way Alex recognized but had never personally lived. She opened the wallet under the pharmacy light. For several seconds, she simply stared at the money. Alex leaned closer without meaning to. "There," he murmured. "Now we find out." But the woman did not smile. She did not hide the cash. She looked at Lily's photograph, closed the wallet, and stood frozen as if the choice had taken something from her. Then, instead of entering the pharmacy, she turned away and walked toward the bus stop. Daniel looked from the screen to Alex. Alex said nothing, but for the first time that night, his certainty faltered. The bus left Emily 2 blocks from Whitmore Holdings, and the moment she stepped onto the sidewalk, she felt as though she had crossed into a city that did not belong to her. The buildings were brighter here, their glass walls catching every streetlight and turning the rain into glitter. Men in tailored coats moved quickly under black umbrellas. Women in polished heels hurried through revolving doors without looking down at the puddles. Even the air seemed different, scented with expensive perfume, wet concrete, and the warm breath of cars waiting at the curb. Emily pulled her worn coat tighter and looked up at the tower named on the business card. Whitmore Holdings rose above her like a blade of light, sleek and silent, with its name etched in silver above the entrance. For a moment, she almost turned around. She imagined walking back to the bus stop, going home, telling herself she had tried. But the wallet felt heavy in her hand, and the thought of keeping it for even one more night made her stomach twist. She stepped inside. Warm air rushed over her face. The lobby was enormous, with marble floors so clean she could see the reflection of her soaked sneakers in them. A chandelier hung overhead like a cluster of stars. Behind a long white desk, a security guard in a navy suit looked up from his computer and immediately frowned. "Can I help you?" he asked, though his tone made it clear he hoped he could not. Emily brushed damp hair away from her cheek. "I found a wallet. It belongs to someone named Alexander Whitmore. The address inside brought me here." The guard's eyes moved from her old coat to the wallet, then back to her face. "You found Mr. Whitmore's wallet?" "Yes, sir." "Where?" "Near a bus stop on the west side." He leaned back slightly, as if the story already sounded wrong to him. "And you came all the way downtown in this weather to return it?" Emily nodded. "That is right." Before he could answer, a woman in a cream-colored blazer approached from the reception desk, holding a tablet against her chest. Her name tag read Marissa Vale. She gave Emily the quick, practiced smile of someone who had already decided a person did not matter. "What seems to be the issue?" she asked. The guard gestured toward the wallet. "She says she found Mr. Whitmore's wallet." Marissa's eyebrows lifted. "How fortunate." The words were polite, but her eyes were not. "Did you remove anything from it?" Emily's face warmed. "No, you understand we will check." "You should," Emily said quietly. Marissa seemed surprised by the answer. She took the wallet with 2 fingers, as if touching it too long might stain her. She opened it, counted the cash in plain view, and looked almost disappointed when everything appeared to be there. $10,000, she said softly, then looked at Emily again. Most people would have made a different choice. Emily was too tired to pretend that did not hurt. "I am not most people." The guard shifted awkwardly. Marissa closed the wallet. "Mr. Whitmore is unavailable. You can leave your contact information, and if he wishes to provide a reward, someone may reach out." Emily shook her head. "I do not need a reward. Everyone needs something." The words landed harder than Marissa probably intended, because Emily did need something. She needed medicine, rent money, a miracle. But she lifted her chin and placed both hands at her sides so no one would see them tremble. "Maybe," she said, "but I did not bring it back because I wanted to be paid. I brought it back because it was not mine." For the first time, the lobby went still around her. High above, behind a wall of tinted glass overlooking the lobby, Alex watched every second on the security feed. He saw the rain dripping from Emily's coat. He saw Marissa's cold smile. He saw the way Emily stood there with nothing but exhaustion and dignity, holding her upright. And when Emily turned to leave without giving her name, without asking for $1, without even looking back, Alex felt something unfamiliar rise in his chest, not admiration exactly, and not guilt alone, but the uncomfortable beginning of shame. Emily made it halfway across the lobby before the security guard called after her. "Miss, wait." She stopped near the revolving doors, rain still sliding down the glass in silver lines behind her. For one small second, hope rose in her chest. Maybe they had changed their minds. Maybe someone with a little kindness had seen her shaking hands and tired eyes and understood that refusing a reward did not mean she was not desperate. But when she turned around, the guard was only holding out a clipboard. "Your name and phone number," he said. "For our records." Emily looked at the clipboard, then at the elevator doors beyond him, polished gold and silent. Somewhere above, Alexander Whitmore was probably sitting in an office bigger than her entire apartment, unaware that a stranger had spent her last bus fare bringing back his wallet. "Emily Carter," she said, writing carefully because her fingers were cold. She added her number, then hesitated before leaving the address line blank. She did not want people from this building knowing where her mother slept. Marissa noticed. "No address." Emily handed the pen back. "My phone works." Marissa gave a thin smile. "Of course." Emily stepped outside before anyone could say another word. The rain had softened, but the wind off the lake still cut through her coat. She checked her transit card at the station kiosk and felt her stomach sink. Not enough balance for the ride home. She stood there under the shelter, watching buses hiss past, and finally began walking west with her arms wrapped around herself. Each block felt longer than the last. Her shoes were soaked. Her throat burned from holding back tears. She had done the right thing, and somehow the right thing had left her colder, poorer, and farther from the medicine her mother needed. Back in the tower, Alex remained in front of the security monitors long after Emily disappeared from view. Daniel stood beside him, silent now, no longer trying to soften the truth. On one screen, the lobby camera replayed Emily placing the wallet on the desk. On another, the exterior camera showed her pausing at the curb, checking her phone, then walking away instead of getting into a cab. Alex frowned. Why is she walking? Daniel looked down at his tablet. She may not have enough fare left. The words landed quietly, but they hit harder than any accusation. Alex turned away from the screens and looked at the wallet on his desk. $10,000. An amount he had placed there as bait without thinking twice. To him, it had been a controlled variable, a detail in an experiment. To Emily, it could have been heat, food, rent, medicine, safety, and she had still returned it. Pull up her information, Alex said. Daniel hesitated. Sir, she did not give an address. She gave a phone number. That does not mean she gave permission to be investigated. Alex looked at him sharply, but Daniel did not step back. For once, his assistant's expression held no fear, only disappointment. You asked whether honest people still exist, Daniel said. You found one. I suggest you do not punish her for proving you wrong. Alex stared at him, then slowly looked back at the screen where Emily's figure had vanished into the wet night. He wanted to argue. He wanted to say he was only trying to help. But the truth was uglier. He had not seen Emily as a person when the night began. He had seen her as an answer, a result, proof for a theory built from his own pain. At Rosie's diner the next morning, Emily arrived before sunrise with damp shoes, red eyes, and a smile she put on the way other people put on a coat. She served coffee to truck drivers, refilled syrup bottles, and slipped an extra biscuit onto old Mr. Harlan's plate, telling him the kitchen had made too many again. Her mother's medicine was still unpaid for. The rent deadline still waited like a storm cloud over her day. Yet when a teenage cashier accidentally gave her an extra $20 in change after her shift, Emily walked back inside and returned it without a second thought. Across the street, sitting inside a plain black sedan with no driver in sight, Alex watched through the rain-dotted window, dressed not in his usual tailored suit, but in a simple gray coat. He had come to observe, he told himself, to understand. But when Emily smiled gently at the embarrassed cashier and said, "Everybody makes mistakes," Alex realized he was not studying her anymore. He was being taught. Alex did not enter Rosie's diner that morning. He sat in the black sedan until his coffee went cold in the cup holder, watching Emily move from table to table with the kind of patience that made him feel ashamed of how little patience he had ever offered anyone. She laughed when a little boy spilled orange juice across the counter. She gently corrected a customer who tried to blame a young busboy for an order the kitchen had mixed up. She carried herself like a person who had no room left for pride, yet somehow still had plenty of dignity. When Daniel called, Alex answered without taking his eyes off the window. "You are late for the 9 o'clock board review," Daniel said. Move it to 10. And the investor breakfast? Cancel it. There was a pause. Are you still outside the diner? Alex said nothing. Daniel sighed softly. Sir, observing her from a car is not understanding her. It is just another version of hiding. Alex ended the call, but the words stayed with him. By late afternoon, after Emily had finished her first shift and gone to the laundromat for her second, Alex finally made a decision. He left his driver, his watch, and his usual sharp black suit behind. He changed into dark jeans, a plain navy sweater, and a gray wool coat, the kind of outfit that made him look like a successful man, but not necessarily a billionaire. It was not honest, and he knew it. But telling her the truth felt impossible when the truth began with a wallet, a hidden camera, and a cruel test she had never agreed to take. That evening, just after 7, he pushed open the door of Rosie's diner. A bell chimed above him. The place was warm and small, with red vinyl booths, chrome-edged tables, and the smell of coffee strong enough to soften the cold clinging to his coat. Emily stood behind the counter refilling sugar containers. She looked up with the automatic smile of a waitress who had learned to be kind before knowing whether kindness would be returned. Then she paused. For a second, Alex wondered if she recognized him from the driver's license. But the photograph had been small, and he looked different without a suit and without the hard expression the world expected from him. Just one, she asked. Yes, he said. Please. Counter or booth? Counter is fine. He sat near the end, where he had seen old Mr. Harlan eating earlier that day. Emily handed him a menu with a corner taped in place. Coffee. That would be great. Cream and sugar? Black. She poured the coffee, then glanced at him again. You are not from around here. Alex almost smiled. Is it that obvious? A little. You looked at the menu like it might ask you for a password. For the first time in days, maybe months, Alex laughed without planning to. I am Alex, he said, offering only the part of his name he could say without exposing everything. I work downtown. Emily, she replied. I work here, obviously. There was no performance in her voice, no attempt to impress him, no polished charm. She treated him like any other customer, which somehow felt better than the attention he usually received. He ordered tomato soup and grilled cheese, not because he wanted it, but because it was the first thing she recommended when he admitted he had skipped lunch. As she moved away, a man at the next booth snapped his fingers and complained that his fries were not hot enough. Emily apologized and offered to replace them, though Alex could see from the steam rising off the plate that the fries were fine. The man muttered something about poor service. Emily's smile flickered, then returned. Alex felt an old instinct rise in him, the instinct to command, to correct, to make someone regret being rude. But Emily handled it with calm grace, not weakness. When she came back to refill his coffee, Alex said quietly, You are very patient. Emily looked toward the booth, then shrugged. Patience keeps the lights on. Does it ever get exhausting? She met his eyes then, really met them, and for a moment the noise of the diner seemed to fade. Everything gets exhausting when you cannot afford to fall apart. Alex had no answer. He had spent years believing money revealed people, but sitting across from Emily Carter, he began to understand that hardship did too. And unlike him, she had not let hardship make her cruel. Over the next week, Alex returned to Rosie's diner every evening, always sitting at the same end of the counter, always ordering something simple, and always pretending that his presence was accidental. Emily noticed, of course. Waitresses noticed patterns the way bankers notice numbers. The first night, he ordered soup and grilled cheese. The second, meatloaf with mashed potatoes. By Friday, he knew the coffee was better after 6 because Maria, the night cook, made a fresh pot, and Emily knew he did not like pickles but always forgot to ask for them off his plate. Their conversations began small. Weather, work, the traffic on Lakeshore Drive, the old jukebox near the bathroom that only played when someone hit the side of it just right. But little by little, the small talk opened into something warmer. Alex learned that Emily loved hospitals, not because she liked illness, but because she believed a good nurse could make people feel human on the worst day of their lives. She told him she had once been 2 semesters away from finishing her nursing program, then laughed softly and said life had made other plans. Alex wanted to ask why she had stopped, but he already knew enough to understand that some answers cost too much. Emily learned that Alex worked in business downtown, that he had no siblings, that his grandfather had raised him to believe a promise meant something. and that he drank coffee like a man who did not sleep enough. She did not know his last name. She did not know that the tower he mentioned belonged to him. And every time she smiled at him as if he were just Alex, not Alexander Whitmore, he felt both grateful and dishonest. One evening, a snow warning rolled across the television above the counter, and the diner emptied earlier than usual. Emily was wiping down tables when her phone rang. Alex saw her face change before she turned away. "Mom, slow down," she said, her voice careful. "Did you take the small white pill or the blue one?" She listened, pressing one hand to her forehead. "Okay, it is okay. I will call the clinic in the morning. No, please do not worry about the cost tonight." When she hung up, her smile returned too quickly. Alex recognized that kind of smile. It was the kind people used when they did not want anyone to see where they were breaking. "Is everything all right?" he asked. "My mother mixed up her medication schedule. She is fine, just scared. Do you need to leave?" "I need to finish closing, then catch the bus, then pretend I am not scared too." The honesty slipped out before she could stop it. Alex stood. "Let me drive you." Emily immediately shook her head. "That is kind, but no. It is snowing. It is Chicago. Snow is not exactly breaking news." "Emily." The way he said her name made her look at him. Not like a customer. Not even like a stranger. Like someone who had begun to matter without asking permission. She softened, but only a little. "I do not get into cars with men I barely know." Alex nodded, ashamed again by how easily money had made other people's caution seem unnecessary to him. "Then I will wait at the bus stop with you." She studied him for a moment, then gave a tired smile. "You are strange, Alex from downtown. I have heard worse." They closed the diner together in quiet rhythm, Emily stacking menus while Alex carried a trash bag to the back door after asking twice if it was allowed. At the bus stop, snow fell in soft flakes over the streetlights, turning the rough block almost beautiful. Emily shivered, and Alex offered his gloves. She refused at first, then accepted when he said his hands were already numb anyway. For 20 minutes, they stood side by side while cars passed in wet whispers. Emily told him about her father, how he used to save coins in a coffee can for family trips they never quite took. Alex told her about his grandfather's delivery truck and how the old man had kept the dented steering wheel mounted in his garage as a reminder not to become impressed with himself. For once, Alex was not performing control. Emily was not performing strength. When the bus finally arrived, she handed back his gloves, but her fingers lingered for half a second against his palm. It was nothing, almost nothing, yet Alex felt it all the way home. That night, inside his penthouse, surrounded by glass, silence, and a city that belonged to him on paper, he realized the only place he had felt real all week was beside a tired waitress at a snowy bus stop. The night at the bus stop changed something between them, though neither Emily nor Alex said it aloud. After that, his visits to Rosie's diner no longer felt like accidents carefully repeated. They felt expected. Emily found herself glancing toward the door whenever the bell chimed after 6 o'clock, and Alex found himself leaving meetings on time for the first time in years, ignoring invitations from people who wanted his money, his influence, or his name beside theirs in photographs. At the diner, no one cared about any of that. Maria teased him for always sitting in Emily's section. Old Mr. Harlan told him the meatloaf was better on Thursdays. The teenage cashier, Sophie, asked if he could help her understand a business class assignment, and Alex spent 20 minutes explaining profit margins with packets of sugar and jelly cups. Emily watched from behind the counter, trying not to smile too obviously. He was different there. Not powerful, not distant, just patient, a little awkward, and more thoughtful than she had expected a man in a clean wool coat to be. One Friday evening, when the snow had melted into gray slush along the curb, Emily came in late for her shift with worry written across her face. Her mother had spent the afternoon at a clinic, and the doctor wanted more tests within the week. Emily did not say how much they cost, but Alex saw the folded estimate sticking out of her apron pocket when she reached for a coffee pot. He wanted to take out his phone, call the hospital board member who owed him a favor, and make every bill disappear before dessert. Instead, he sat still, because he was beginning to understand that help given without respect could feel like another form of control. "You look like you have not eaten," he said when she stopped near him. Emily gave him a tired look. "That is a dangerous thing to say to a waitress." "Then I will phrase it better. Have you had dinner?" I had coffee and half a banana. That is not dinner. It is dinner with good branding. He smiled, but the concern did not leave his eyes. When her shift ended, he waited outside the diner, hands in his coat pockets, standing under the red neon sign as if he had been placed there by the cold itself. Emily stepped out with a paper bag of leftover rolls for her mother and paused. Are you following me now, Alex from downtown? Only as far as the corner, he said. There is a 24-hour grocery store. Let me buy you soup. Not charity, just soup. She should have refused. She had built her life on refusing anything that came with invisible strings. But there was something careful in the way he asked, something that made room for her pride instead of stepping over it. So she nodded. They walked through aisles bright with fluorescent light, debating chicken noodle versus tomato basil as if it were the most important decision in Chicago. Alex pushed the cart too slowly, and Emily laughed at him for comparing soup labels like corporate contracts. At the checkout, she insisted on paying for the rolls, and he let her. Outside, he carried one small bag while she carried the other, and somehow that balance mattered. In front of her apartment building, Emily stopped on the sidewalk and looked up at the dark second-floor window where her mother was waiting. You know, she said softly, most people either pity me or tell me I am strong. I am tired of both. Alex looked at her, the streetlight catching snow melt on his hair. What do you want people to say? Emily thought about it. Maybe just that they see me. The answer hit him harder than she knew, because seeing her was exactly what he had failed to do at the beginning. He had watched her through cameras before he had listened to her as a person. The truth pressed against his chest, heavy and overdue. He almost told her everything right there, beside the cracked sidewalk and the grocery bag between them. But then Linda Carter appeared behind the window and lifted a hand in greeting. Emily smiled, warm and unguarded, and Alex lost his courage. I see you, he said instead. Emily looked at him for a long moment, and for the first time, she believed he might mean it. As she went inside, Alex remained on the sidewalk, knowing that every step closer to her made the lie behind them more dangerous. 3 days later, Emily agreed to take an extra catering shift because the pay was better than a regular night at Rosie's Diner, and the agency promised cash tips at the end. She almost said no when she heard the event was a private charity gala downtown, the kind where people paid hundreds of dollars a plate to talk about helping families who lived like hers. But her mother's tests were still waiting, the rent was still late, and Pride did not pay clinic invoices. By 6 that evening, Emily stood inside a service hallway wearing a white button-down shirt, black pants, and shoes that pinched her heels because they had been borrowed from Sophie at the diner. The ballroom beyond the doors glittered with crystal lights, white flowers, and round tables dressed in silver linens. A string quartet played softly near a wall of windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. Everywhere Emily looked, people lifted champagne glasses, shook hands, and smiled as though nothing in the world could ever slip out from under them. She kept her head down and focused on her tray. Sparkling water, mini crab cakes, tiny pieces of toast topped with things she could not pronounce. The work was simple enough. Smile, offer, step away. For the first hour, no one really saw her, which was almost a relief. Then the lights dimmed, and a woman at the podium welcomed everyone to the Whitmore Foundation Winter Benefit. Emily froze so suddenly that the glasses on her tray trembled. Whitmore. The name slid through her chest like cold water. She turned toward the stage just as applause filled the room. A tall man in a black tuxedo stepped into the spotlight. For one impossible second, her mind refused to understand what her eyes already knew. It was Alex. Not Alex from downtown, not the quiet man at the diner who ate grilled cheese and waited with her at snowy bus stops. This man stood beneath a giant screen that read Alexander Whitmore, Chief Executive Officer of Whitmore Holdings, beside a polished photograph of the same face she had seen on the driver's license inside the wallet. Emily's breath caught. The tray felt heavier than stone. Around her, guests clapped with easy admiration while Alex began speaking about trust, community, and the responsibility of those with resources to protect those without them. Each word felt sharper because she had believed him. She had told him about her mother, her father, her unfinished nursing degree, her fear of being pitted. She had let him walk her home. She had let herself feel seen. Then, near the service station, 2 employees from Whitmore Holdings spoke in low voices, not realizing she was behind the curtain of hanging coats. Is that the waitress? One whispered. The wallet girl? The other gave a quiet laugh. I think so. The one who passed his little honesty test. Marissa said she looked like she was about to cry when she returned it. Emily went still. He really had cameras on the whole thing? Of course. Mr. Whitmore wanted to know if anyone would bring back all the cash. $10,000, and she did. Poor thing had no idea. The room seemed to tilt. Emily set the tray down before she dropped it. The wallet. The bus stop. The cash. The photograph. The way Alex had appeared at the diner afterward, pretending to be ordinary, pretending their conversations had begun by chance. None of it had been chance. She had not been a woman he met. She had been a test result. On stage, Alex looked across the ballroom, and his eyes found her. His sentence faltered. Emily did not wait for him to recover. She backed away through the service doors, past the kitchen, past the manager calling her name, and into the cold night air. Snowmelt darkened the sidewalk beneath her borrowed shoes as she hurried down the block, tears burning hot against her cheeks. Behind her, the gala music continued as if nothing had happened. But inside Emily Carter, something tender and foolish had just broken, and no amount of money in that shining room could buy it back.